Hey everybody, welcome to my booth. I'm Jay. Today we're looking at the Earthworks ETHOS and the Shure SM7b, both very popular broadcast-style microphones of a slightly different style, but they're popular. I figured it might be helpful for some folks to throw them head-to-head. We'll start off with a blind comparison, and then afterwards I'll talk about how I found them useful in professional voiceover scenarios. Before we dive in though, hey, if you like the stuff and you find it helpful, you can help me out by clicking the buttons down there, and there are other ways to support these efforts directly in the description below. Let's get into it. Okay, here we are on microphone A. This is microphone A. I'm about a fist's distance away from the capsule, and there's very minimal post-processing applied. There's just a little bit of EQ to help out with some room resonance here in my booth. To give the microphone more of its natural tone rather than my booth. And other than that, no post-processing. How do you feel about this one? And let's hop over to microphone B. And here we are on microphone B. This is microphone B, same distance away, same post-processing exactly applied, just a little bit of tweaking for the room resonance. And here's how this microphone sounds. Let's hop back over to microphone A, give that another listen. And here we are back on microphone A. We're back on microphone A, and this is with the foam windscreen applied. On the next round, I'll pull the foam windscreen off on both microphones so we can compare that, because that's one of the ways that you can open up the microphone, make it sound a little bit brighter in the top end. In both cases. Let's hop back over to microphone B and see how we feel about that one more time. And here we are back on microphone B, same distance, same post-processing, and how do we feel about this one? It's time to hop back over to microphone A. Let's go. And here we are back on microphone A, and you might have noticed it opened up a little bit, and that's because I've removed the foam windscreen from this. I'm still the same distance away, still no post-processing, but this is what it sounds like if you take that windscreen off. How do you feel about microphone A? One more time, back to B. And here we are back on microphone B, and same as microphone A, I've removed the foam windscreen from this, so it is unshielded at the moment. And how do you feel about this one? And for the final time, let's hop back over to A. And for the final time, we're back on microphone A. One day when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." One day when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet." Microphone A was the Earthworks ETHOS. And microphone B, of course, the Shure SM7b. So, did you guess right? Were your ears well tuned? Did you pick them out? Or were you pleasantly surprised? Or maybe unpleasantly surprised? I'd love to hear down below. Before I get too far away from it, I'd love to just lastly showcase the frequency switches here on the back of the Shure. This is the high presence boost. This is what it sounds like with it on, and if I switch it off, this is it with it neutral. So this is the Shure SM7b with no presence engaged, and this is the Shure with the presence boost engaged. It's a relatively subtle difference, and I think that this would personally, for voiceover, be a preference thing rather than a right or wrong answer. But, it's there for you if you want to explore it. And then this is the high-pass filter. You'll notice that it pretty remarkably reduces the low end of my voice. This is a more aggressive high-pass filter than most folks might use, though I haven't tested this on female presenting voices, higher registered voices personally, so I can't really speak to that if that suits you. So this is what it sounds like. I don't use it. I leave this in neutral, but for context, there you have it. So the main reason I make these videos is when I was starting out, I wanted to know which microphones would be useful and why for a voiceover artist and in what scenarios. So the question of which is better between these two microphones doesn't really apply here. They're both really, really good microphones that are frankly becoming, in the case of the Earthworks ETHOS, and are, in case of the Shure SM7b, industry standards in a lot of respects. Both of these microphones you'll see all over YouTube. You'll hear them on tons of different podcasts. And more so, professional voiceover artists are using each of these in certain use cases. So, with all that said, let's dig into some pros, cons, things that I love about using these microphones, and some things that maybe I struggle with from time to time. So both of these microphones are really, really easy to use. They make your life simple, and they do that in a couple of different ways. Firstly, their handling on both of them is fantastic. You can move them around, and they don't have a lot of, noise as you're moving them around, which is why for podcasts and radio broadcasting, both of these microphones are industry standards in a lot of ways because of that specifically. In addition to that, they have fantastic noise rejection. To showcase, if I turn this 90 degrees and if I keep talking and turn around and then come on back to the front, you'll notice that my voice drops off significantly. And this can be a really great boon if, for example, you don't have an isolation booth like I do with this Studio Bricks or some other brand, or if you just want that superior isolation. Even with my Studio Bricks, sometimes I'll have sound out in my apartment, out in New York City and Brooklyn here, and I just don't want to deal with it. In which case, I can be better off sometimes throwing one of these mics on and using it for a project instead of a U87 as an example, which is an incredibly sensitive microphone where even this Studio Bricks will struggle to isolate entirely. Beyond that, with the noise rejection, it allows me a little bit of latitude and just relaxation here in my recording booth. If I'm using something that's really sensitive like a Neumann U87, I have to really pay attention as I'm monitoring or as I'm playing back my audio that my posture doesn't shift, my chair doesn't squeak, that my cat doesn't meow outside my booth because it'll pick that up. With microphones like the SM7b and the Ethos, I have to worry about that less, and I can be a little bit looser here in my booth and not worry about the rustle of everything, particularly if I'm doing a really long 6-hour audiobook recording session as an example. Now, in one of the cons in terms of quality of life and ease of use of the SM7b specifically, this being a dynamic microphone, it is vulnerable to a few different things. Firstly, it is very gain hungry, notoriously so. Meaning, if you're using a lower quality, inexpensive, entry-level preamplifier or audio interface, you're going to have to turn that up a lot to get a usable audio signal out of your dynamic Shure SM7b. And that's why a lot of folks will end up using a cloud lifter or an inline booster in order to amplify their signal a bit. Shure also just came out with the Shure SM7db, I believe it's called, which has a built-in gain booster inside the microphone. Now, all of those options raise the price of this microphone by about $100 to $150 on average. So that's just something to bear in mind if you're going in this direction. In addition to that, this being a dynamic microphone, I've run into a couple issues specifically in my own studio. If you're using a lower quality XLR cable, or if your microphone is oriented in certain positions, it can be particularly vulnerable to radio interference or EMF interference. For example, if your cable, your XLR cable, is of lower quality and it crosses your computer monitor, your phone's by it, if it goes by a power cable, you will hear in your audio signal significant static interference from the electromagnetic waves going into your cable. It's just something you're going to have to deal with. Additionally, I found that when I was using certain cables or in certain recording spaces, if I oriented my microphone at certain angles in my space, say, for example, my monitor is right here, and I angle my SM7B towards that at certain angles, I would then start to hear similar electromagnetic interference of some sort, some just noise that you don't want. So that's just a quality of life thing to bear in mind if you're going this direction. You might run into that, and you might want to invest in more high quality XLR cables. The brand that I use is Mogami. By contrast, the Ethos, being a condenser microphone, it doesn't have those electromagnetic interference issues. Additionally, I really just love using this microphone, particularly just because I'm a sucker for aesthetics. And this microphone actually won an award for design a few years ago. I can't remember what year. But it having this orbit cable, you can angle it and position it very easily on your stand. And in terms of quality of life, I just love those small things that this microphone does really, really well. Both of these microphones, in addition to that, for quality of life, are very low profile, which if you know me, you know I'm a fan of. I really don't like big pop filters in my face that I'm having to look around or through to see my copy or my audiobook manuscript. And both of these are really, really helpful in that because my field of vision is completely clean. It's also really helpful if you're an on-camera person like I am right now because your face is not impeded by microphones or pop filters. Beyond that, this being a condenser microphone, there are a couple things that I find really useful about this microphone against the SM7B, which I jockey back and forth, to be perfectly honest. But because this is a condenser microphone, it's much more sensitive in my use. I'm not talking about stat sheets. I'm just talking about my own personal experience with it. Meaning, with the SM7B and other dynamic microphones, sometimes because the way that they listen to the world, the mechanism that hears sound waves, it's just not as sensitive as a diaphragm is. So it feels at times that I really have to push sound into it. It's not as nuanced. It doesn't listen as well to, smaller performances, whereas a condenser microphone does more so. And that's not better or worse. That's just a use case thing. So if you're someone who is doing a podcast where people are volatile, they have a lot of dynamic range, they go from loud to soft, they're talking across space, this could be an advantage, having that pushed in sound feeling. But if you're someone like me, you like to talk soft, you like to be gentle about things, having a condenser microphone can be useful there. And I've found it really nice in audiobooks and guided meditations for that respect. Additionally, with the removing of the windscreen, which I'll do now, the brightness that you get from this, you will still want to use a windshield pop screen, pop filter, that's just more transparent than this if you do elect to do this. But this microphone just offers a little bit more flexibility in that respect. You can brighten up the sound as you can hear now, or you can go for that more broadcastery sound by putting this on. And you kind of have two different modes of the microphone where this might be used more for like a commercial aspect. And this could be used more so for a long-form narration. Though I will say I do use this microphone in radio promos for like Spotify, Pandora, quite frequently, and I love the sound of it. Speaking of the sound of these two microphones, they are very, very easy to use. They require very little post-processing unless you want to make adjustments. The sound going in is very good coming out. Now, in terms of what I use these for, again, mainly long-form projects, long article narrations, audiobooks. The folks that I worked with at Audible loved the Shure SM7b for a time. They really liked using it, whereas I'm starting to use the Earthworks ETHOS more in that respect. But aside from that, I think both are really wonderful microphones that offer good options for you if you're interested. Anyway, if you have any questions about these or anything else voiceover related, you can hit me up here or on my website where there's also some coaching. And until the next one of these, be well, everybody, and I'll see you there. Toodles.